and welcome to the Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading.
Today, we'll be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper, dated 5th March 2019. The topics to be discussed today are reflected on your screen, and the timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So let's begin. This news appears on page number 1 and talks about the demand by the Jammu and Kashmir political parties to hold simultaneous general elections and the state legislative elections. So therefore, in the discussion of this news article, we'll be talking about the simultaneous election in India. From a syllabus perspective, it will fall under GS paper 2. Now, simultaneous elections refer to holding elections to the Lok Sabha and the state legislative assemblies together or simultaneously, once in every 5 years. We know that the issue of simultaneous elections has been in news for quite some time, ever since this present government has come into power, and has been advocating the idea of one nation, one election. Now, the background of this issue is that till 1967, simultaneous elections were being conducted in India. If you will look into the political history of India just after independence, it was the Congress party which was ruling in the centre and in majority of the states. Therefore, it became very easy to conduct such simultaneous elections till Congress enjoyed thumping majority in both the Lok Sabha and in the states. Because obviously after independence, the first elections were held for the Lok Sabha and the states were held from October 1951 till March 1952. And since at that time, Congress commanded a lot of respect and popularity from all the segments of the masses, hence Congress came into power both in the centre and in majority of the states. So up till 1967, there was simultaneous election. But eventually, towards the end of the 1960s, there was emergence of regional parties in lot of states. So because of instability and rising local demands, many regional parties emerged across India. And this led to instability of many state governments, and slowly this process of simultaneous elections came to a pause. Even in the year 1968, many state legislative assemblies were dissolved prematurely. Further, you must be knowing that even the Lok Sabha dissolved prematurely in 1970. So you see, what started to happen is that the sync and coordination between the elections became all botched up because various state assemblies were dissolving prematurely and even the Lok Sabha dissolved prematurely. Hence, the election calendar became out of sync. Before we go on to analyze the pros and cons of holding simultaneous elections in India, let us first look at some of the recommendations which have been given by various committees in their reports. The first is that the Law Commission of India, in its 117th report, suggested that elections of some of the legislative assemblies whose term is ending within 6 months from the Lok Sabha elections, for such state assemblies, their elections can be clubbed with the Lok Sabha elections. So, for example, the Lok Sabha election is to be conducted in April, and few of the state legislative assemblies' tenure will get over in August. So, for these state legislative assemblies, their election can be clubbed with the Lok Sabha election, but the result of this election will be declared later. That is, though the election for this state legislative assembly will be conducted in April along with the Lok Sabha, but their results will be declared in August when the official term for the state legislative assembly will get over. Second, the Standing Committee on Personal Public Grievance, Law and Justice had submitted a report in 2015 on the feasibility of holding simultaneous elections to Lok Sabha and State Legislative Assembly. So this committee recommended that the elections could be held in 2 phases. It stated that the elections to some state legislative assemblies could be held during the mid-term of the Lok Sabha, while the elections to the remaining legislative assemblies could be held with the end term of the Lok Sabha. So basically it said that for some state legislative assemblies, their election can be conducted along with the election of Lok Sabha, while for some other state legislative assemblies, their election can be conducted during the mid-term of the Lok Sabha. The third is that the Niti Ayog's 3-year action agenda had suggested that all elections in India should happen in a free, fair and synchronized manner. So therefore, in this direction, Niti Ayog had suggested to move towards switching to a more synchronized election to the Lok Sabha. So for this, the Niti Ayog said that they would require a maximum one-time curtailment or extension of some of the state legislative assemblies, which is to say that for once, to get all the election dates in our country synchronized And together, the tenure of some of the state legislative assembly has to be cut short, and for some others, it has to be extended so that eventually they will all fall together during one time. And such curtailment and extension will happen only one time. For this, the Niti Aayog said that they would draft appropriate constitution and statutory amendments and will agree on a workable framework so that such transition to simultaneous election can be facilitated. Though despite all these recommendations, as far as these 2019 general elections are concerned, we do not see any possibility that these general elections would be a simultaneous election, since already 4 states have gone for the state legislative assembly elections in December. Let us first look at what are the arguments which are presented in favor of the simultaneous elections in India. Now you have to understand that the cost of an election basically has two components. One is the expenditure which is incurred by the Election Commission of India, and second is the expenditure which is incurred by the political parties also. So the first argument for simultaneous election is that simultaneous election will help in reduction of expenditure. Further, not just money is involved in conducting elections, but a large number of government employees and even public buildings are diverted from their regular responsibilities for election duties. So therefore, the supporters of the simultaneous elections argue that it will reduce election expenditure in terms of both the money as well as will reduce the diversion of human resources for election duties. Secondly, elections in states lead to the imposition of the model code of conduct. Now, when this model code of conduct comes into operation during the election season, it is seen as an obstacle to the government service delivery mechanism, because this model code of conduct effectively restricts the introduction of any new development programs and schemes in that state. Hence, in a way, it hampers the governance process in that state. Thirdly, it is felt that simultaneous elections will make more room and time for actual governance in our country, because then the entire country, after the completion of election process, can focus on governance for an uninterrupted period of 5 years. Because every year some state witnesses assembly elections, and even the political party which is in power in the center somehow gets involved during the election process, and this diverts much of the central government's and even the state government's time from important national and domestic concerns and consumes energy and resources to ensure victory in such state assemblies. Further, simultaneous elections will also avoid policy paralysis, which happens when the government's attention is diverted from the implementation process to this process of election. The fourth reason that the supporters give is that simultaneous elections will help in reducing the populist measures by the government. Because lot many times we have seen that during elections, political convenience takes precedence over public interest. So to lure voters, political parties generally agree to popular demands without any consideration of the public interest. Hence, simultaneous election will reduce such opportunities for political parties and will also reduce the populist measures. Fifthly, it is felt that simultaneous election promote national perspective over the regional perspective, hence become very important for the unity of the country. That is, they promote the unity of our country. The sixth reason is similar to the first one, that if we go for simultaneous elections, we can save heavily on the logistical cost which are incurred by both the election commission, the governments and the political parties to conduct an election. Now, the people who give an argument against simultaneous election firstly say that simultaneous election is against the federal structure of our country. Now, we know that India has a federal structure and a multi-party system, where elections are held for state assemblies and the Lok Sabha separately. Further, the centre and the states are equal and sovereign within their jurisdiction. And since the constitution itself has provided for separate jurisdiction of both the centre and the state, even in the matters of legislature and election, it is felt that the simultaneous election will go against the federal structure as it undermines the state elections. Hence, the second point is related to the first point, that simultaneous election will reduce the importance of the state elections. Now, the third point is rather the most major one, which says that simultaneous election privileges national issues over regional or local issues. Now, because what happens if the voters are made to vote to elect two types of governments at the same time, at the same polling booth and on the same day, then the distinction between the state and the center somewhat gets blurred. Because when the state assembly elections will be held along with the Lok Sabha elections, then the local issues which concern the state may get undermined by emotive issues of national importance. Because it has been found out that voters in such a scenario in the past have always went for the same party whenever simultaneous elections are held. But clubbing state legislative elections with general elections will lead to a situation where the national narrative will consume the regional problems and issues. Because you have to understand that assembly or the state elections are fought on various local issues, and in true spirit of federalism, parties and leaders are judged in the context of the work they have done in the state. But in simultaneous election, will somehow confuse these regional issues with the national issues, and there is a greater possibility that they will be swept away by issues of national importance than over the regional issues which are actually more closer to their homes. Fourthly, they feel that the local party is at a disadvantage because bigger political parties who are better funded have an advantage over smaller regional parties. Because of the better funding and since they have more money, they are able to better perform than these local parties who, though do not have the money, but really understand the local issues in a much better way. Lastly, simultaneous election can give rise to certain situations which cannot be preempted currently due to lack of practical experience. One such question is with regard to the president's rule. So it can happen that due to constitutional failure in a state, the state assembly has to be dissolved. So then will the state be allowed to carry on, or will the president's rule under Article 356 will be imposed? Similarly, what will happen if the union government dissolves prematurely due to coalition politics or passing of a no confidence motion or some other reason? Then will this amount to dissolution of all state governments? So thus there are certain practical constraints in having simultaneous election which hitherto have not been answered. Because in theory everything can be worked out, but in practicality there can be a lot of instances where there is no proper solution or answer to the questions which simultaneous elections might pose if they are actually implemented. Now, even in the year 2017, in GS Paper 2, a question was asked on simultaneous election, which said the simultaneous election to Lok Sabha and the state assemblies will limit the amount of time and money spent in electioneering, but it will reduce the government's accountability to the people. Discuss. So, based on a discussion, you can try to attempt this question. With this, let's move on to our next news. This next news appears on page number 10 and is in the context of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. From a syllabus perspective, it will fall under GS Paper 2, International Relation, under the category of Important International Institutes. Now, the news is that post Pulwama terrorist attack, both Russia and China have recommended India and Pakistan to resolve their bilateral dispute within the framework of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. To be specific, the framework which it mentions is the Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure of the SCO, also known as the SCO RATS. But however, India's stand to this recommendation is that firstly, India says that the Kashmir dispute does not require a third-party mediation. That is to say, both India and Pakistan will solve it amongst themselves and do not require any third party's recommendation or assistance. Secondly, India says that Russia has not recommended such SCO-led mediation to India directly. And thirdly, India says that before advising India and Pakistan to resolve their bilateral issue, China should first help India and other countries like the US and the UK to combat terrorism by specifically placing Masood Azhar as a global terrorist under the UNSC framework. Let us now understand few things about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now, the SCO is a permanent intergovernmental international organization and it was formed in the year 2001 in Shanghai in China, hence the name Shanghai Cooperation Organization. In 2001, it was formed by Kazakhstan, China, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. Now, you should know that prior to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, all the above countries except for Uzbekistan were also members of the Shanghai Five. As far as the current membership of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is concerned, currently it has 8 countries as full members, namely Kazakhstan, China, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, and even India and Pakistan, who became their full member in the year 2017. In addition to these 8 full members, several other countries have observer status and the status of a dialogue partner with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now, coming to what are the main objectives of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The first objective is that it wants to strengthen the mutual trust as well as the friendliness among its member states. Secondly, the SCO wants to promote cooperation in politics, trade, economy, research, technology, culture, education, energy, transport, tourism, environmental protection, and even other areas like countering terrorism, financial frauds, etc. Hence, the mandate or the cooperation of the SCO is multifaceted. Thirdly, the SCO even wants the member countries to join hands and lead a collective effort to ensure peace, security, as well as stability in the region. Fourthly, it wants to establish a democratic, fair, and rational new international political and economic order, especially for their region, if not for the whole globe. Now, moving ahead, in the beginning, we discussed that both Russia and China want India and Pakistan to resolve their dispute within the framework of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. That framework is the Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure or the RATS, which is a permanent organ of the SCO and is based in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. Now, the objective of this RATS is based upon the Shanghai Convention, which wanted to combat the three evils of terrorism, separatism, and extremism. Further, the reason RATS is so important in the fight against terrorism is because this RATS possesses information of over 100 terrorist organizations and 2500 terrorists. So since it has a pool of data regarding the terrorist organization and terrorist, hence it claims to lead the fight against global terrorism. So you should remember that the RATS is a permanent body of the SCO and is based in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, and that its mandate is to fight terrorism, separatism, and extremism. So, having understood about the HCO and the SCO RATS, let us now move on to our next news. This news appears on page number 13 and talks about the government's move to work on a new scheme which will encourage work from home jobs in the IT sector. From the perspective of your syllabus, it will fall under GS Paper 3 in the topic of issues related to Indian economy, especially employment, and also GS Paper 2 under the topic of government policies for the development of various sectors. So basically, the government is working on a scheme to push work from home jobs in the IT sector by offering financial incentives to both the employee and the employer. Let us now understand the various proposals given under this scheme. Now, as per the government sources, the scheme is proposed for a 3-year period, that is till March 31st, 2022, with an outlay of about 270 crore rupees to create about 50,000 work from home jobs. Secondly, to incentivize such work from home jobs, the government will provide financial support to the employees by providing them with financial incentives like giving them laptops, smartphones, or even broadband connections to enable them to work from home. Further, the government is also planning to give certain salary-based incentives so that they stick or retain their work from home jobs. Because it should not happen that once they get a work from home job, then they convert this work from home job into a regular job. Therefore, to ensure that people retain this work from home jobs, government will give certain salary-based incentives. Fourthly, the government also aims to provide certain additional incentives to women employees, differently abled citizens or persons with disabilities, the STs and the SCs, and employees from other vulnerable groups. Fifthly, as per the scheme, to avail benefits under this work from home scheme, employees will need to have an Aadhaar linked universal account number. Next, as far as giving incentive to the employer is concerned, the government has decided that it will pay 50% of the total expenditure incurred on creating technical infrastructure to enable this work from home jobs. So therefore, the government will give 50% of the technical infrastructure expenditure to the employer in order to incentivize the employer to create such more work from home jobs. But the government has put a cap of maximum 10,000 rupees per job, which will be reimbursed to this employer. Lastly, this initiative is likely to be launched as phase 2 of the India BPO promotion scheme, which is currently operational under the IT ministry. This India BPO promotion scheme basically encourages firms to set up operations in tier 2 and tier 3 cities in the country. Now, this new scheme will help firstly to create more jobs in the ITES sector, thereby increasing the talent pool for the IT domain. Secondly, this will not only help in creating employment opportunities but will be especially benefit for groups like women, differently able persons, etc., who can now sit in the comfort of their homes and still get jobs with the IT sector. Another point to keep in mind that this work from home policy may extend relaxations in the labor laws similar to that given to the startups under the Startup India program. So if this happens, this work from home policy will be excluded from labor laws like Payment of Gratuity Act, Employees Provident Funds and Miscellaneous Provisions Act, Employees State Insurance Act, etc. Let us now know a few things about the Universal Account Number. Now, the Universal Account Number is a 12-digit number which is allotted by the Employee Provident Fund Organization, that is the EPFO. You need to remember that a Universal Account Number of an employee remains same throughout the life irrespective of the number of jobs the employee changes. So what happens is that every time the employee changes job, the Universal Account Number will remain same, but the EPFO will give this employee a new member identification number which will be related to that new job, and this new member identification number will be linked to the person's universal account number. Now an employee can get this new member identification number by submitting the universal account number to the new employer. Second is the India BPO Promotion Scheme or the IBPS. Now the reason why such a scheme was required was because the IT sector in our India has remained confined to only a few select urban cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, etc. Therefore, the government felt that this IT sector jobs have to be spread across entire India and especially be made accessible in small towns. Thus, with the objective to create opportunities for the youth living in such small towns so that they do not have to migrate to the urban areas, this scheme was enacted to promote BPO or the IT sector jobs in small cities. Further, for the Northeast region, a separate Northeast BPO promotion scheme was also conceived by the government simultaneously with the India BPO promotion scheme. In this IBPS, special incentives are given to the women employees as well as the disabled citizens. Secondly, operations are set up in towns other than the capitals of the various states, and the scheme also focuses on generating employment and promoting local entrepreneurship. Lastly, you need to know that this scheme comes under the IT Ministry. Therefore, with this, let's move on to our next news. This news appears on page number 13 and talks about the RBI's decision to fine 7 banks because of their delay in the SWIFT implementation. This SWIFT will fall under the category of economy. Now, the context of this article is that following the 14,000 crore fraud in the Punjab National Bank, the RBI had directed all the banks in India on time-bound implementation and strengthening of the SWIFT-related operational controls. And now, failing this, RBI is imposing fines on the banks for non-compliance to its directions. Let us now understand about the SWIFT. Now, the SWIFT, or the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, was founded in the year 1973 by a group of 239 banks from 15 countries which formed a cooperative utility to develop a secure electronic messaging service and common standards to facilitate cross-border payment. Thus, SWIFT is a global member-owned cooperative which is currently headquartered in Brussels, Belgium. So basically, this SWIFT provides a messaging network which is used by various banks and financial institutions to send and receive information about various financial transactions worldwide through a secure, reliable, and standardized environment. So thus remember, SWIFT is a messaging network which is used by banks and financial institutions worldwide to send and receive information about the financial transaction in a very secure, reliable, and standardized way. Hence, your SWIFT provides secure transmission channel for messages between various financial institutions. Further, it supplies a standardized language that institutions use to communicate payment instructions and other informations to one another. Thus, the SWIFT messages are programmed in the Fin language, which is a message type that transmits financial information from one financial institution to another. Next, in order to use the SWIFT messaging services, customer needs to connect to the Swift environment. There are several ways of connecting to it. Firstly, either directly through permanent lease lines, through the internet, or through the Swift's cloud service. Now, very important thing which you need to keep in mind and which usually students get confused is that your Swift does not facilitate fund transfer like the NIFT or the RTGS. Rather, it is a secure financial message carrier. So, the Swift is not used to transfer fund but is used to send and receive information about various financial transactions. Hence, its core role is to provide a secure transmission channel so that, for example, Bank A knows that its message to Bank B goes to Bank B only and to no one else. Further, Bank B in turn knows that it's Bank A and no other than Bank A that has sent, read, or changed the message en route. Lastly, the Swift hosts an annual conference known as the SIBOS or the Swift International Banking Operations Seminar in various cities across the world. With this, let's move on to our next news. This news appears on page number 7 and talks about a study conducted by the International Food Policy Research Institute, which has found out that residue burning is one of the leading factors of respiratory illness. From the perspective of your syllabus, it will fall under the category of environment and ecology because it concerns with air pollution. Now, the study, which was conducted by International Food Policy Research Institute or the IFRPI, its key finding is that firstly, crop residue burning is the leading cause of air pollution, especially in the states like Punjab, Haryana and Delhi. As far as the cost which one has to pay with regards to crop residue burning, as far as health is concerned, crop residue burning is the leading factor of acute respiratory infection. The study showed that districts which had higher number of fires per day were associated with population which had threefold higher risk of acute respiratory infection. In addition to crop residue burning, other factors causing acute respiratory infections are motor vehicle congestion, open drainage, cooking without biomass, construction in urban areas, etc. Now, the economic cost of this crop residue burning is that annually India loses almost 30 billion US dollars in terms of the days of the work lost in the affected states. Further, in Punjab, Haryana and Delhi, almost 2.35 lakh crore rupees are lost every year due to crop residue burning. Now, we know that crop residue burning is a leading cause for air pollution in northern India, especially in Punjab, Haryana and Delhi. Even the Supreme Court appointed Environmental Pollution Prevention and Control Authority, that is the EPCA, in its report has pointed out that crop residue burning is one of the 5 key sources of air pollution in Delhi NCR. Now, as far as the International Food Policy Research Institute is concerned, it is a non-governmental organization and an international agricultural research center. The IIFPR provides research-based policy solutions to sustainably reduce poverty, end hunger, and malnutrition in developing countries. Let us now discuss the various steps taken by the government to reduce the crop residue burning. Firstly, in the year 2013, the National Green Tribunal issued a directive to the states of Punjab, Haryana, and Uttar Pradesh to completely ban stubble burning. Further, the National Biofuel Policy of 2018 prescribes the use of crop residue to produce biofuels. Thirdly, the recently launched National Clean Air Program talks about the in situ management of the crop residue to tackle the air pollution, especially the particulate matter. Further, the state governments, especially that of Punjab, has now started to provide subsidy in order to facilitate the purchase of certain machines and equipments by the farmers, which will help eliminate crop residue. An example of such machine would be the Happy Seeder. But despite all these measures, crop residue burning continues. The reason is firstly that there is no proper alternative use of straw for the farmers. Secondly, burning is the cheapest and the quickest way for the farmers to get rid of this crop residue and clean the land for the next crop because the harvest window is only around 20 to 30 days. Further, farmers do not have enough capital to purchase such expensive machines which can help tackle the issue of crop residue burning. It has also been found that using crop residue for biofuel is still not very economically viable for the farmers because the cost of collecting the straw or the husk is very high, and further the ethanol which is produced from such husk is very low. Finally, as the way forward, the study says that firstly, there should be cooperation across all sectors and levels, that is city, regional and national, to effectively address air pollution. Second, to specifically deal with crop residue, they suggest that the government should somehow incentivize the use of straw in biofuel production. Lastly, the policies and investments should support cleaner transport, cleaner power generation, and even cleaner and energy efficient municipal waste management, which can help reduce sources of outdoor air pollution. So, with this, let's move on to our next news. This news appears on page number 7 and talks about that recently the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, has launched the One Nation, One Card. The context of the news is that India's first indigenously developed payment platform, that is the National Common Mobility Card, has been recently launched by PM Modi in Ahmedabad. The background of this news is that in accordance with the National Urban Transport Policy of 2006, the Ministry of Urban Development had taken the initiative to implement an interoperable automatic fare collection system for public transport in India. And under this interoperable automatic fare collection system, various urban public transport systems are to be integrated so that they can offer a seamless system to the users. Basically, what it means that as per this AFC system, now a user will be able to pay one fare and then travel in all the required public transports mode to reach his destination. The National Payments Corporation of India, NPCI, is the nodal authority to make standards and specification for the National Common Mobility Card. Now, the details of this NCMC, that is the National Common Mobility Card, is that this will be a bank issued debit card, credit card, or a prepaid card which the customer can use to make payments across all segments of urban public transport in India, including metro, bus, railways, tolls, parkings, etc. Now, this card would already have a stored value on it and therefore will be able to support all kind of offline transactions across all modes of travel. Therefore, since this card can be used in an offline transaction mode, it will provide minimal financial risk. Therefore, the advantage of this NCMC is that it will provide interoperability for passengers between bus, train, metro, parking lots, etc. That is, across all urban public transport systems. And secondly, this NCMC will act as a single e-purse which will give access to multiple products. So basically what you need to remember that this National Common Mobility Card is an initiative of Ministry of Urban Development and that it will provide interoperable automatic fare collection for all urban public transport systems. And secondly, that the National Payments Corporation of India is the entity which has been entrusted to prepare the standards and specification for this NCMC. With this, let's move on to our next news. This next news appears on page number 7 and is talking about the recently New Delhi Declaration which India has signed with 4 countries in order to save rhinos across boundaries of the country. Now, this news was comprehensively covered in the DNS dated 1st March 2019. So, to have more information about this article, you can refer to this DNS. With this, let us now move on to our practice questions. Now, based on our discussion, here is your first set of prelims practice question. Please solve this by pausing the video. We'll discuss the answer after 5 seconds. Question number 1 is in reference to the National Common Mobility Card. The first statement, it is an initiative of Ministry of Transport. This is incorrect. It is an initiative of Ministry of Urban Development. Second, the National Payments Corporation of India has been entrusted to prepare standards and specification of the National Common Mobility Card. This statement is correct. Hence, the correct answer is B, 2 only. The next question is with reference to the challenges related to the implementation of simultaneous elections in India. First is the submergence of regional and local narrative by an overall national narrative. This is correct. Second, financial advantage to national political parties over regional political parties. This is also correct. Third, reduction of electoral expense. This is incorrect. Hence, the correct answer to this question is B, 1 and 2 only. Here is your next set of prelims practice question. Please pause the video and we'll discuss the answer after 5 seconds. Question number 3 is in reference to the SWIFT network. The first statement, It is an institute that provides for international funds transfer across the globe. This is incorrect. We specifically discussed in a discussion that the SWIFT does not facilitate actual transfer of funds, but rather only facilitates the sending and receiving of information related to the financial transactions. Second, it has been established by Bank of International Settlement. This again is incorrect. The SWIFT basically is a cooperative which has been established by almost 239 banks of almost 15 countries. Hence, the right answer is D, neither 1 nor 2. Question number 4 is with respect to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The first statement, it is an intergovernmental organization formed to specifically promote cooperation in international trade. This is incorrect. We had discussed that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization promotes cooperation in not only international trade or economics, but also in politics, research, technology, tourism, anti-terrorism, environmental protection, etc. Second, India got an observer status to SCO in 2017. This is also incorrect. India got a full membership to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in the year 2017. Hence, the right answer is D, neither 1 nor 2.
With this, we come to an end to today's discussion. Let's move to the question for the day.